Two different people, and I never knew which Doug I was gonna get.
You're 24, he's 54. Were you worried about her connecting with this guy who's so much older?
Things didn't start off well. It was like, oh yeah, Eva, this is my new wife.
I felt like Ashley was taking my dad away from me.
It was all a masquerade. I mean, can I straight up say that? Doug was not who he portrayed himself to be.
That was sort of like, what's going on?
So you're thinking that your husband, the man who loved you and seemed to adore you, would poison you?
I read the allegations and I thought, oh my God, this is crazy. Doug never poisoned Ashley.
Is it possible that maybe you just imagined this?
Maybe it was all in my head.
But you know now that this sounds pretty dysfunctional.
Doug, what are you doing? She tried to ruin your life. I don't think he could have ever guessed what was going to happen to him.
I've never been so scared in my life.
Alleging he attacked her in her home and that she fired back multiple times in self-defense.
Ms. Benefield was in great fear of immediate and severe bodily harm.
A woman out on bond, still awaiting her fate.
So many law enforcement officials said, no, this isn't adding up.
Former ballerina at the center of the so-called Black Swan murder trial.
Only two people know exactly what happened. One of them is a suspect for second-degree murder. The other is dead.
Of all of the things combined.
Ashley grew up in Maryland as an only child. Her mom, Alicia Byers, says they had a special bond. Your marriage dissolved, you split up with her father, and you raised her as a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for the two of you?
At first it was an adjustment, but you know, we did well. We're very close. She was blessed with a lot of talents. And so it was a real joy raising her.
And at some point, she becomes smitten with ballet.
Very, yes. She got to the point where she did it 7 days a week.
I was training during the day, all day. It was an everyday, all day thing.
She soon learns that it takes more than ability alone to make it as a professional dancer. Ashley's 5'9" and considered by most ballet companies to be too tall, something no amount of training can overcome.
There are height ranges in companies. A lot of that is because of partnering and complications that can arise if you're not well matched height-wise.
The ballet world tends to be kind of cookie cutter. It was hard finding a good fit for a company.
With her height and then a hamstring injury holding her back, Ashley decides to hang up her point shoes in her early 20s. You begin to shift your focus a little bit. In 2016, you became captivated by politics. What led you to the Trump campaign?
Well, I'd actually always been interested in politics. I wasn't looking for it. The opportunity came up, and I was just finishing up with one chapter of my life, and it seemed like the right thing to do, so I jumped in.
Ashley's job for the Trump campaign was to go to rallies, and she would rile up the crowd, pray with the crowd. You could actually see videos of her online. She thought she was going to be part of the Trump team.
In her diary entries from this time, Ashley says she felt a special bond with candidate Trump. She writes, "We got to the plane early and waited for Mr. Trump to arrive." Ashley writes about her hopes for her future. She writes kind of a plea to God. "I want to be a wife and mother. Please bring me to that special man you've chosen for me."
Ashley wanted children. She wanted a family. She prayed that God would bring her a man to be with her. She made it clear in the diary what her plan was.
In August of 2016, in the thick of the campaign, her prayers seemed to be answered while attending a fundraiser at Dr. Ben Carson's home in Palm Beach, Florida. At some point, you meet a man named Doug Benefield.
Yes.
What did you think of him?
He was charming. Very funny, really smart, confident, but quiet. We were there for political reasons, but then also he was a man of faith, shared similar interests.
Those common interests included politics, God, and guns.
first night that Doug and Ashley met, Ashley had a gun in her bra. Doug, who has a military background, he thought, wow, look at this girl. Like, she's strong and she's powerful and she's, not afraid of weapons, and everything about her was just great.
He nicknamed you Ashley Oakley.
Yeah, we both had very strong opinions about the Second Amendment. That was something we bonded over. I had a concealed carry permit. You wanted to be a responsible gun owner. We talked the whole night. When the evening was over and everyone was leaving, we were texting and up till 3 o'clock in the morning. It just seemed like I had met my soulmate. We were like the perfect match. He kind of swept me off my feet. It was like a whirlwind. I think it was about 4 days in when he first told me he loved me.
4 days? That's pretty quick.
Yeah, it was quick.
Something else Ashley says didn't bother her was the couple's significant age difference. You're 24, he's 54.
Yeah.
You're a young woman. Suddenly you're being romanced by this 54-year-old man. Did anybody in your life say, slow down, Ashley?
No, it just kind of happened.
But the bliss wouldn't last. Ashley learns that the man she's falling for has been married before.
Nothing was adding up. The more I tried to figure things out, the more the story changed.
And she says she begins uncovering secrets, leading her to wonder just who Doug Benefield really is. In the summer of 2016, 24-year-old Ashley Benefield is on the road stumping for Donald Trump when she finds romance at a Palm Beach fundraiser. Did sparks begin to fly between you two?
It was like an instant connection, yeah. We both had that evangelical background, so we spent a lot of time talking about that.
Doug Benefield grew up in a Baptist family, the middle of 3 sons, with a stay-at-home mom and a father who worked as a scientist at NASA.
Doug graduated from high school in Huntsville, Alabama. He was a top wrestler in the state. He decided to follow his father and our family to Texas A&M.
After graduating from college, Doug joins the U.S. Navy in Pensacola. He rises through the ranks quickly, and the Navy assigns Doug to a position in Charleston, South Carolina.
While he's working for the Defense Intelligence Agency, he gets involved in renovations of old historic buildings with people that he meets in Charleston.
Doug started up some businesses here, a restaurant, some other things. He had a group of friends and colleagues.
He loved it there. And one of those locations that he most loved was out on Sullivan's Island. Doug found a small hole-in-the-wall Irish pub called Dunlevy's Pub. That same Irish pub is where he meets his wife, Renee.
If someone were to ask me to sum up Renee in a few sentences, it'd be very difficult. She's stunningly beautiful but doesn't know it, and loves to make people laugh.
Doug has a pretty quick courtship with a woman named Renee Kauser. They marry, and in 2001, their daughter Eva is born.
My mom was the sweetest, happiest woman you would ever meet. She was an angel walking on earth. She was never, ever, ever in a bad mood. She loved everybody.
Doug's marriage to Renee, by all accounts, was a happy marriage. Of course, ups and downs, but generally a happy marriage.
Doug and Renee and Eva together are just this triad. They're just 3 together all the time. You never saw them apart. Happy, beautiful family.
But when Eva is just 14, the happy family suffers a devastating loss.
I was waiting in the pickup line outside of my school, and she wasn't there. And I went home, and nobody was answering the doorbell, and I didn't have my key, and my mom wasn't answering her texts.
Eva called and said, I can't get a hold of my mom, and Dad's in Dallas. And so I get on the phone with Doug.
Doug asks Melody for help. Her husband goes next door and breaks into the house to find Renee unresponsive, face down on her bed.
I just remember going back out on the porch and seeing my neighbor's face, and he shook his head, and I knew that she just wasn't there anymore. She passed of an underlying heart condition. It was shocking.
An autopsy reveals that Renee died of natural causes.
He tried to stay really strong for me, and I never really saw him break down from it. It was different. It was quiet in the house. It was just different.
Then, just 9 short months after her mother's passing, Eva meets a new woman in her father's life, Ashley Benefield.
I heard about her on a Friday. I met her the following Saturday, and then Sunday, I was up in my room, and my dad came upstairs, and he said, "Eva, we need to have a conversation, all three of us." And I said, "No, I think the only thing that I would be interested in hearing is if you told me that you proposed to her." And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, he said, "We're married." Yeah, it was a lot.
Eva's not the only one blindsided by the quick marriage, which happened at a secret ceremony just 13 days after Doug and Ashley met.
First time I hear anything about Ashley is they're married and she's already moved in to Doug's home in Mount Pleasant.
How did he propose? Was this a formal get on his knee and propose to you? How did that happen?
It was more of like, hey, we should just do this. Like, let's get married. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
They move very quickly, and before you know it, they're engaged and married.
Yeah, it was like, whoa.
What was your wedding like?
It was small. It was just me and Doug and 2 of his friends.
So suddenly you're Mrs. Benefield.
Yep.
Were you happy?
I was thrilled. Yeah, I felt like I had finally met my soulmate. I think a lot of it had to do with Eva. He really sold me on the fact that she needed a mommy person to be there. And I guess I felt needed and wanted.
But Eva, still grieving the loss of her mom, says she neither wanted nor needed a stepmom, especially one so close to her in age.
The age difference between me and Ashley is 8 years. Anytime I hung out with her and we were shopping downtown, we would get mistaken as sisters.
How did you get along with Eva?
I think things didn't start off well because she didn't really find out until after we were married. It was like, oh yeah, Eva, this is my new wife. And it didn't go over well.
I will just say this, he messed up. He messed up by jumping in to a relationship and not inviting his daughter into it. That was, I think, a huge mistake.
My dad seemed very excited and happy, and I also understood that he was grieving differently than me.
Ashley and Doug are moving full steam ahead. They don't just want a romantic partnership, they want to be business partners.
It seemed like we found something, once again, that we were both equally passionate about, so we just hit the ground running.
But what Ashley and Doug don't realize is that both the romance and the business will soon self-destruct.
You can't make promises and not live up to them.
Like, what's going on? People were mad.
I found out that it was all a masquerade.
My name is Sarah Moraski. When I was a young girl, I saw a performance of the Nutcracker, and I fell in love with it right away. I knew right in that moment that's what I wanted to do with my life.
After years of sacrifice and dedication, Sarah finally gets her big break. She's cast in the Pennsylvania Ballet's production of The Nutcracker, in the lead role, the Sugar Plum Fairy.
It was like it was a fairy tale in a way. In that moment of my life, it was everything I could have dreamed up.
But Sarah says one night backstage, her dream is unexpectedly shattered. She's told that the company is going in another direction.
The director took me aside and said, "You're too tall." For me to even think that it was done was unimaginable after sacrificing my whole life for this moment, for this career. It was a few months after that that I received a message online from Ashley Benefield.
Ashley says she and Doug were talking one night when they had the idea to start a ballet company that would include all kinds of dancers.
I was a tall dancer. I'm just a tall person, I guess. I just been talking about how there were things in the ballet world that I didn't think were right. And that, well, you know, if it was up to me, I would do it differently. And he was like, well, why don't we do it?
Ashley called me. We spoke. I remember her saying things like, I want to make a change for ballet. I want ballet to be able to show its beauty in the best way with all different kinds of dancers.
The concept was diversity. I trained with beautiful dancers of all shapes, sizes, colors, backgrounds, you name it. And I watched them have a hard time getting a job. I was frustrated by that.
You came up with the name for it, American National Ballet.
Yep.
So he was going to handle the business part, and you would be more creative.
Yep. Doug had done a lot of like fundraising for different companies, for a lot of these kind of up and coming tech companies. And I remember him being like, oh, you know, tech companies and ballet, like I'm sure we can, you know, fundraise for both.
Doug sat down with me and directly asked me, I want you to work with Ashley. You know what you're doing to help get the basics of the company started.
He said they were doing a ballet company, and I'd come home from school and Ashley was in the dining room with headshots laid out, sticky notes everywhere.
When I was originally brought in, Ashley had already hired, there were 50 dancers in the company, which surprised me because when you're first starting out, that's an awful lot of money that's going out, and you don't have any money coming in yet.
That was sort of like, what's going on? It just seemed like a lot for a company that was starting out, and that maybe they were biting off more than they could chew.
Even though he doesn't have the backing yet, Doug is convinced that he can raise the money. So dozens of dancers from all over the world flock to American National Ballet with the promise of year-long contracts, state-of-the-art studio facilities, even a housing stipend for apartments in the heart of Charleston.
The idea was remarkable. The execution was a little less.
It became somewhat apparent fairly quickly that Doug was overpromising and not going to be able to deliver on all of this.
In the fall of 2017, the dancers begin arriving, only to find that the promised housing stipend isn't available, and the original rehearsal space promised doesn't exist.
And then I think in like mid-October, word started to get out that the dancers weren't quite getting paid in a traditional way, that they were being paid in cash.
Doug was then pulling money from every source that he could of his own, money that he didn't have, to try to just fund this ballet.
It just got worse and worse each day. I didn't know where the company was going.
Adding to the chaos, Ashley is nowhere to be found. Not at rehearsals, not working with the dancers. She seems to have just vanished. And meantime, Doug is so financially strapped that American National Ballet ends up laying off nearly half of the recently hired dancers.
It's all fine and well to conceive of an amazing, ambitious dance company. It's great, but if you can't deliver it, somebody's going to get hurt. And the dancers, certainly in this case, are the ones who got hurt the most.
The very next day, after half the company's dancers are let go, Ashley suddenly reappears. Not in person, but in a post on social media, writing in part, I publicly disavow my support for American National Ballet, and adding, I'm no longer associated with this organization in any way.
I was horrified. I didn't know all of the things that were falling apart behind the scenes. I didn't see it coming. I no longer wanted to be part of it.
Ashley left the scene, and then Doug abandoned the scene. He's like, one day he just wasn't there anymore. The organization evaporated.
People were mad. People were very angry. Because losing your job in ballet is not like, okay, I'm gonna go on Indeed and see what's, who's hiring. You're kind of locked out for the year until the next audition season.
American National Ballet has hurt everyone. You can't make promises and not live up to them because there are people's livelihoods that are involved. There are people's dreams that are involved.
Some fault Doug for mismanaging the ballet, and others blame Ashley for disappearing.
Ashley's absence from the ballet company was a very significant basis for the failure. She was the face of this company. When she left, the dancers, they didn't have anything.
But Ashley says there's a reason she left Charleston and the ballet behind. She claims she had to, that her very life depended on it.
He pulled the gun out and started waving it around.
I was living a nightmare. It was terrifying. It was like two different people, and I never knew which Doug I was gonna get.
In less than a year, Doug and Ashley Benefield's American National Ballet goes bust. What very few people knew, though, was that behind the scenes, the same was happening to the couple's marriage.
Doug always explained to me that the biggest factor of growing tensions at home was the conflict between Ashley and Eva.
I felt like Ashley would try and act like my mom and tell me what to do. And I was like, you were less than 10 years older than me.
Ashley says while American National Ballet is getting up and running, Doug and her arguments over Eva and the ballet become more frequent, aggressive, even scary.
He would yell and scream and cuss. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Things would be happy and okay one moment, and then the next minute he was out of control.
I never really saw a shift in their relationship, but that's also because I was trying to stay out of it as much as possible. I said, okay, if my dad's happy, I'm happy.
On June 15, 2017, Eva is out of the house when a heated argument between Doug and Ashley quickly escalates.
He pulled the gun out and started waving it around. He threw the gun at me. He said that if I left, that he was going to kill himself.
I begged him not to. And then he pulled the trigger. And the bullet went into the ceiling.
At a legal hearing the couple will later attend, you can hear Doug's own voice as he describes this incident. While he doesn't deny the argument or firing his 9mm, he disputes Ashley's characterization of the fight.
You did discharge the gun into the ceiling, correct?
Yeah, I did. It was a horrible decision.
She says, he then threw the gun at me. That didn't happen, did it?
No, I did not throw the gun at her. I just kind of spun in the chair and threw it against the wall.
She says, Doug then grabbed the gun again and held it to his own head, threatening to kill myself. Did you do that?
No, I did not.
Ashley says at another point during that same argument, Doug physically abuses the family dog.
He hit Sully.
Your dog?
Sully got between us and he punched him.
At that same 2018 hearing, Doug tells a different version of this story to Ashley's attorney.
You also punched the dog the day that you discharged the firearm?
He jumped up in my lap. He's a big dog. I admit I hit him. I didn't hit him like you would, hit a punching bag or anything, but I hit him. But yes, I was probably too physical with him.
Were you beginning to rethink the marriage?
After he shot the gun in the house, that's when I really realized that I had a problem. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what was coming next.
What comes next for the couple is a bit surprising. A celebration of marriage 9 months after their initial hasty I do's.
They had a wedding ceremony right after that. Everyone's smiling. She's smiling.
People had already booked their tickets and everyone was coming. And I didn't want them to see that part of my life. I felt like a failure. I didn't know what else to do.
Even with their turbulent marriage, Doug and Ashley decide they want to have a child together. In August, you find out you're pregnant. What do you think initially?
I was scared. It was supposed to be like a happy thing, but my heart dropped. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Here again, Doug's story differs from Ashley's.
It wasn't an accident, of course, that she got pregnant. It was planned. Doug had had a vasectomy years ago. Ashley paid with her own credit card for Doug to have a vasectomy reversal, and they then started to try to get pregnant.
One thing both sides do agree on, Ashley had a difficult pregnancy.
It was rough.
Morning sickness?
Yeah, and it wasn't even morning sickness. It was like around the clock sickness. I couldn't eat. He couldn't take care of me. And he drove me down to Florida and dropped me off at my mom's house.
Doug's life is a whirlwind. He's got his hands full in Charleston with the ballet company and raising his teen daughter, Eva. And he's spending his free time driving to Florida to be with Ashley. The two are in constant communication.
Doug was driving back and forth to take care of his family, spread it across these two states. And he had to also be back in Charleston because on September 18th, this was going to be the big launch of the American National Ballet. Ashley was not going to be able to be present for the launch, supposedly because she was so sick.
But at that very moment, what Doug doesn't know is that Ashley and her mom are driving from Florida to Charleston, not to attend the ballet launch, but for an entirely different reason. On September 18th, you decided to move your belongings out of Doug's home.
Yeah.
She wrote a note alleging some things were wrong in the house and that there had been some abuse or at least violence on his part, and that she was therefore leaving him.
Ashley writes, "Do not harass or try to follow me or I will call the police," and then goes on to say, "I will talk with you only via text, and do not call me or my mom. We will not pick up."
He was completely stunned. He had no idea Ashley was leaving him.
Just after learning that his wife is leaving him, Doug is again blindsided by a restraining order, barring him from contacting Ashley. The expectant dad then hires family attorney Stephanie Murphy to act as an intermediary.
Doug wanted to be present for the birth if Ashley felt comfortable. I sent the letter to Ashley asking, can Doug be part of the birth?
But Murphy says shortly after sending that letter, Ashley gives birth to a baby girl named Emerson, 3 weeks before her due date. Did you tell Doug?
No, there was a restraining order, so I couldn't legally have contact with him.
But he's the father of the child.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you intend for him to find out?
I mean, I knew he would eventually.
Doug didn't know that Ashley had given birth. He learned through an injunction that she filed that the child had been born, and that was several weeks after the child had been born.
Doug's not on the birth certificate. She didn't even give Doug the respect of naming his daughter Benefield. She gave the baby's last name as her grandfather's name. He was devastated. He was devastated that he missed the birth of his child and that he was not able to see her.
But Ashley says she was only doing what any mother would do. She believed that Doug was a danger, not only to her, but to her newborn daughter, too.
At first, I attributed it to morning sickness, but I started to wonder if there was more to it.
Every morning, he would make sure she drank the tea. Why? Why was that so important that she drink the tea?
It's April 2018. Ashley Benefield is a new mom, changing diapers, nursing her infant daughter. And at the same time, she's filing court papers seeking a protection order against her husband and the father of her baby, Doug Benefield.
So it would just basically put up a wall between Ashley and Doug.
It's not just that incident with the gun and the dog. Medical records suggest that she was in good health. Still, she says she had a growing suspicion that the terrible morning sickness she had wasn't just a routine part of her pregnancy. She wondered whether she was being poisoned by Doug.
It seemed like crazy and far-fetched, but I realized that the tea that he had been giving me, if I didn't drink it, he would get really mad at me. And I started to wonder if he was doing something to the tea.
She started telling me every morning he would make sure she drank the tea. Why? Why was that so important that she drink the tea?
I did some toxicology testing through hair testing.
And what did it reveal?
That I had been poisoned.
The results from the lab Ashley privately hires for her hair test show extremely high levels of heavy metals like aluminum, barium, tin. The tests on baby Emerson also detect toxic metals. So you're thinking that your husband, the man who loved you and seemed to adore you, would poison you?
Yeah.
Why?
I didn't know why.
Ashley says she became so concerned for her health that she resorted to some pretty serious measures, including more than 20 sessions inside a hyperbaric chamber like this one, along with her infant daughter. Ashley says her hope was that this high-pressure environment would help detoxify their blood. She insists that her fear that Doug had tried to poison them was real. Others call it fiction.
Doug never poisoned Ashley. Never. I read the allegations and I thought, oh my God, this is crazy.
Doug's family attorney points to those medical records during and after Ashley's pregnancy, showing her to be in good health.
The day after the baby was born, she was breastfeeding the baby. So which is it? Are you poisoned to the point that you are full of heavy metals, or are you okay and therefore you're going to breastfeed your baby? There's always been holes in the story.
A judge agrees, siding with Doug and his toxicology expert who challenged Ashley's test results. Her request to keep Doug away from her and their child is denied.
There is not a single scintilla of credible evidence that Miss Benefield has ever been poisoned.
A judge didn't believe you.
Yeah. I started to just feel like maybe I was crazy. Maybe it was all in my head.
So now Doug Benefield has moved into an apartment in Florida as the couple attempts to co-parent Emerson.
But things started to deteriorate. He was becoming very possessive and controlling again.
Doug has a tracking device put on Ashley's car, even hires a private investigator. His attorney says it wasn't unreasonable given Ashley's past allegations.
He never tried to hide the fact that he had put the tracker on the car. I think he wanted just to kind of figure out what's going on. Am I being lied to?
And then new concerns from Ashley.
She started coming home hurt. One day came back with her face very badly injured.
And what were you told?
He said that she was playing with bubbles and that she slipped and fell.
It was consistent with what happened. She fell on her face with a pacifier. Ashley, however, made another abuse allegation.
The Sheriff's Office and Child Protective Services investigate the claims and conclude that there are no indicators of injury or abuse.
None of these cases led to charges. The Child Protection Team closed them without any findings, and then the Sheriff's Office closed them as unfounded.
Then, amidst all this tension, the Benefields make a decision that will confound everybody who knows them.
He had gotten a job in Maryland, And so we started talking about all moving.
Moving as a family to Maryland.
Not as a family, but moving, like together at the same time.
I was just stunned. I mean, and once again, Doug, what are you doing? She tried to ruin your life.
All along, Doug would tell everyone who knew him, I believe I can make this work.
How do you rationalize patching things up with a man who you think has been abusing your daughter?
He was her father. I wanted things to be as good as they could be.
But you know now that this sounds pretty dysfunctional.
Yeah. There didn't seem to be a good option.
So you're packing up. You're going to make this move. Doug comes over. Did you two begin arguing?
He was constantly going back to this idea that we had to live together, telling me that wasn't how God intended it. He just flipped out, and it just kept escalating.
Escalating, she says, to the point of no return.
When you take a good man and a woman who's manipulative at her professional level, he's not ever going to play chess with her and win.
That bedroom was empty, other than 2 handguns.
We found that suspicious.
I was extremely concerned about Ashley's safety. Ashley was about to knock down that house of cards.
I don't think he could have ever guessed what was going to happen to him.
And what happened?
I had my gun. I told him to stop. Sorry.
What led you to go for the gun?
I've never been so scared in my life.
The information that I had was that it was a domestic-related shooting. The husband was dead. The wife did the shooting, and she claimed self-defense.
Benefield's life is taking center stage at what's been dubbed the Black Swan murder trial.
Good morning, Miss Benefield.
There was always this little thought in the back of my head that said Ashley's going to do something to him.
She said, my dad's dead, isn't he? And then she said she killed him. She killed him, didn't she?
Why would you have a loaded gun in the house and you've got a child?
There was a ticking clock. She was very, very afraid that Doug was going to take this child away from her.
This is all part of Ashley's crazy campaign to just annihilate Doug in every single way.
And starts moving his arms around. Well, show me. What was he doing?
We stand with Ashley! We stand with Ashley!
Even her own little daughter marching for her mom.
We stand with Ashley!
He told you he had killed his wife?
And he said that he could make me disappear too.
In the ballet world, it's known as the pas de deux, a duet, a step of two. For Ashley and Doug Benefield, a former ballerina and a businessman, their dance begins with a 13-day whirlwind courtship, plans to build a ballet company, and later, a baby. But the love affair turns dark and disturbing. Court battles, disputed allegations of poisoning, abuse. And in the finale, Doug and Ashley, seemingly about to reconcile and start anew, reach a sudden and tragic end. What happened in the moments before the gunshots rang out in this Florida community in September of 2020 will be scrutinized for years by investigators, by lawyers, and the media. Ashley Benefield has kept quiet about what she says happened that night until she sat down with me. How are you doing?
It depends on the moment. Just a lot of emotion, kind of like a roller coaster.
That roller coaster, Ashley says, took a sharp turn in the fall of 2020, when after 4 years of ups and downs, she and her husband, Doug, were preparing to move to Maryland. The plan, according to Ashley, was to continue living separately, just as they had in Florida.
He was constantly going back to this idea that we had to live together.
In these text messages from September 27th, the Benefields exchanged jokes, even emojis. Doug arrives at 5:30 with a U-Haul at the gated community where Ashley lives with her mom. Ashley's mom and daughter Emerson are out of the house at a nearby park. Ashley claims it isn't long before things go from friendly to fiery. Sounds like you guys are just agreeing to pack. And did you two begin arguing verbally? Was there yelling?
There was a back and forth.
She goes on to say that Doug becomes physically aggressive too, at one point bumping into her with a moving box and scraping her side. She then says she tries to diffuse the tension and asks him to leave.
He ended up trapping me, and I tried to leave. He hit me.
Where did he hit you? Did he threaten you?
He said I couldn't leave. I almost made it to the front door and he stopped me. I ran to my bedroom and he followed me there. Told him to stop. Sorry.
What led you to go for the gun?
He had never hit me before. I thought he would stop if he saw it.
What did you think was about to happen?
I thought he was actually going to kill me this time.
Did he have a gun?
Not that I could see. He told me I was done. And even though I was the one holding the gun, he plunged at me. I'm sorry.
You fired 4 times. You missed him twice. And when you hit him, what did you think?
I ran.
Ashley says she races out of her house over to a neighbor's home. 2 residents who were out walking their dog who heard the shots described seeing a woman frantically running from the home.
Maine County 911, what is the urgency?
Okay, it's right next door to me. She just came over. Her strange husband attacked her, and she says she shot him.
Okay, what's his name?
His name is Doug Benefield.
They said that Doug attacked me and I shot him. It was all a blur.
Did you think you had killed him?
I didn't know if he was behind me or chasing me or what. I didn't know.
I don't know. She came in. She was quite hysterical. I didn't know who was banging on my door. Said that he attacked her, and she shot him.
And at the end of that call, even though the neighbor had never seen Doug or Ashley fight, he tells the dispatcher something alarming.
Just between you and me, the son of a bitch has been harassing him and threatening him for a long time.
Okay.
I probably shouldn't say that.
When law enforcement first arrived at the house following the 911 call, and they make it in the house, they find Doug.
He had a gunshot wound to his calf through and through. He had a gunshot wound to his right side chest area that landed in his back across on the left-hand side. Paramedics arrived. They continued CPR and took him to the hospital, but he was pronounced deceased at the hospital.
This is the man that you had loved, the father of your child. What did you make of it when you heard that he was dead?
I was horrified. It's like the worst nightmare.
A nightmare Ashley won't wake up from anytime soon.
That bedroom was essentially empty, other than 2 handguns.
One of them was in a backpack, hanging in the closet. One of them was just in a bin on top of a hamper. And we found that suspicious.
I think that definitely gave the detectives pause.
There was always this little thought in the back of my head that said Ashley's gonna do something to him. Ashley's gonna sabotage him somehow. There's a look in her eyes where she She just looks like she finally got her way.
I remember thinking to myself, there's something wrong here.
Ashley's attorney said, we need to cancel Wednesday's hearing. Doug is dead. I had to call Doug's family. It was just heart-wrenching. The poor girl, I mean, she knew. She just said, my dad's dead, isn't he? And then she said, she killed him. She killed him, didn't she?
And I set my phone down and I said, I don't have parents anymore. I was just shaking violently for like 6 hours.
Doug Benefield's family and friends are grappling with unthinkably tragic news. And meantime, investigators are trying to make sense of what happened the night before.
The information that I had was that it was a domestic-related shooting. The husband was dead, the wife did the shooting, and she claimed self-defense.
Ashley is taken to the sheriff's office, where attorneys from her family court case are waiting. You didn't give a statement. Why not?
My attorney is yelling to me in the parking lot. You know, don't say anything, don't say anything. I guess I was just following advice.
Ashley does consent to photos that she says document the swelling on her face where she says Doug hit her.
When I saw her that night after she left the police station, the left side of her face was swollen. She had obviously been struck. The next morning when she was changing a shirt, I saw the cut on her stomach.
But law enforcement contends that Ashley's injuries don't suggest a life or death struggle.
There was no swelling, there was no bruising, there was no difference in the way she looked. The entirety of the injuries that they found that were relevant was a scratch on her side, and that was it. They got pictures of every angle, of every place that the attorneys wanted them to take, and there were no injuries except for that scratch.
And investigators are also skeptical of Ashley's claims of being attacked because Doug was unarmed. She had access to 2 weapons. You said that you were a responsible gun owner, but why would you have a loaded gun in the house and you've got a child?
Well, the purpose of having a gun is for like a self-defense. The idea is that if something were to happen crazy in the middle of the night, that it would be accessible.
But then you've got a loaded gun that's basically sort of out in a bin. There are those who say that sounds really suspicious.
I mean, I feel like anything can be turned to try to make it look a certain way.
We found that suspicious, that someone would have 2 guns readily accessible in an empty room when everything else is in a U-Haul truck.
According to the medical examiner's report, the fatal gunshot entered the right side of Doug Benefield's chest. To investigators, that doesn't fit with somebody who's lunging toward her.
If someone were coming at you or attacking you, the entrance wound to the fatal shot would not be in the side.
And results from the forensic lab raise even more questions about Ashley's claim of self-defense.
And there was no stippling on Doug's shirt, so that told us that the barrel of the gun was at least 3 to 7 feet away. And that's the barrel of the gun, not even her body. So they were not in a combat life or death situation where they were locked together.
Just over a month after Doug Benefield is shot and killed, Ashley is charged with second-degree murder. She pleads not guilty.
The Manatee County woman charged with shooting and killing her husband.
Suspect for second-degree murder and the...
You're arrested. Charged with Doug's murder. What did you think?
I was shocked. I was blindsided by it.
In the minds of investigators, Doug Benefield's demise wasn't about self-defense, To them, it was Ashley's plan all along.
The whole lie, the whole deception is coming to an end.
Doug was going to find out your wife is lying to you.
There was a ticking clock. She was very, very afraid that Doug was going to take this child away from her. Very afraid.
But others insist the real victim here is Ashley.
Doug Benefield was anything but what he portrayed himself to be.
This is someone who is a predator, and this is someone who was not going to be stopped.
He told me that he killed Renee.
He told you he had killed his wife?
And he said that he could make me disappear too.
I always try to go and sit and watch the sunset when I can. There's so many good memories there. We chose to spread my dad's ashes on station 22.5, and that is the same station that my parents met.
We held a celebration. We raised a toast, a life well lived and a terrible ending to a life.
A life Doug's family insists was cut short by a woman they say was driven to destroy him.
No one at that memorial service in any way believed the story of Doug attacking Ashley, her shooting him out of fear. Doug still loved Ashley in spite of what she did to him, in spite of all the accusations, all the allegations.
I said, why do you keep going back? And he said, you know, I just want to show her that, like, I'm a good man and men can be good. And then he wanted Emerson to have a happy family.
He was willing to do whatever he had to do to be a part of Emerson's life.
And while it appears to some that the couple were trying for yet another fresh start, their family court case in Florida was still open. Both Ashley and Doug had been evaluated by a psychologist, and that report was completed just before the planned move to Maryland. Prosecutors insist the report about Ashley is crucial, that once released, Doug was going to learn that she had no intention of reconciling.
Ashley was afraid that Doug was going to take custody away from her. This is a judge that did not believe her theatrics, and if anyone was going to do it, it was going to be this judge.
And prosecutors believe the move to Maryland offers Ashley another chance and another court to keep Doug away from her and their child.
I believe that she was going to start everything again in Maryland and hope for a different result.
Were you thinking at all, you've got another state you can try to fight him for custody?
My hope was that if something was going wrong, that maybe in a fresh place, they would take it more seriously.
Ashley's mindset leading up to the shooting, prosecutors say, is critical. Was this a woman who truly feared for her life?
Text messages between Doug and Ashley leading up to that day, in the days ahead, and then the day of the homicide were very normal.
To say that someone couldn't have been defending themselves later in a day because of nice text messages that morning is absurd. Doug was always like a flip of a switch.
He could turn on a dime. He could be very happy. He could be charming. But then, for no reason at all, he could get very upset. We kept on asking for help. It's been years of absolute hell. And we went from one abuser to a system that is abusing a victim.
Were you an abused woman?
Yeah, I didn't think so at first. I remember like trying to argue, no, like it's not like that. You know, I don't have broken bones and black eyes.
Most incidents of domestic violence are subtle, where the offender uses isolation, financial control, threatening, verbal abuse, things that the general public doesn't necessarily see. But these are also things that the victim doesn't always know is abuse.
There was no evidence to indicate that she was truly a victim of abuse in the months leading up to the homicide when they were not even living together.
In the months before the shooting, Ashley reaches out to a domestic violence agency and eventually connects with a therapist, Dr. Barbara Russell, who becomes a trusted friend and advocate.
This relationship was very controlling. He was incessantly sending her text messages saying that all of the men that are probably flirting with her need to be exterminated like rats. And then he would shift gears and talk to her very lovingly and sweetly. Like most domestic violence situations, it escalated. He would push her, he would lock her in bathrooms.
During one of those alleged incidents early in their relationship, Ashley claims Doug admitted something about his late wife that terrified her.
He had always told me that they had this fairy tale marriage, that they never fought. And then I found messages.
Text messages, she says, reveal a side of Doug that Ashley claims she saw in her own marriage.
She said one time he kicked her really hard. He had secretly videotaped them starting on their honeymoon. One time we were having an argument and he told me that he had killed Renee.
He told you he had killed his wife?
And he said that he could make me disappear too.
An investigation was done. There was no finding of foul play in any way. There was a full autopsy.
The coroner in Renee's death investigation ruled that she died of natural causes due to a heart condition.
Ashley tried to convince me that my dad killed my mom. I said, Dad, this is what she's doing. She was just kind of like, we're going to therapy where, you know, things will be okay. Obviously, like, I didn't kill your mom.
This was all part of Ashley's crazy campaign. Ashley wanted to keep Doug away from that kid at the expense of everything and everyone else. She would not stop.
Her goal was never to get rid of Doug. Her goal was to keep her daughter safe. That's very different than wanting to kill somebody.
With Ashley, mother, daughter, sister, friend.
Here, how about I push you this way? You ready? Yeah.
So what's summer been like for you two?
Emerson does a lot of swimming, right?
Yeah, I can swim a lot, pretty much.
So you're getting to be a strong swimmer.
Great job.
Ashley Benefield has spent several years under house arrest, living with her mom and daughter Emerson, who's now 5, while awaiting trial for second-degree murder.
Here we are, climbing trees, catching geckos.
This has been hanging, you know, in the balance really for years now. And in the same time, you know, you're trying to mother.
It definitely wouldn't be what I would pick, but I'm thankful for all the good things that we have. She's an amazing little girl. I love being her mommy.
Meanwhile, the other daughter, caught in the middle, 22-year-old Eva Benefield, found her own way to process her pain.
When I was 15, my mom died of an underlying heart condition.
I had been on TikTok for like a few months, and I thought, oh, that'd be funny if I made a joke about my dad being murdered. I made a TikTok, and I put my phone down, and I went to bed, and I woke up, and it was at 700,000 likes. And then it just kept going and going and going. It got like 3 million likes and like 10 million views. And within 2 weeks, I had 100,000 followers.
Eva has gone from grieving and stuck in trauma to getting help to finding an outlet in her art.
Eva, Doug's daughter, does not support you. Do you want to say anything to her?
My heart's broken for her. She has been through so much. I wouldn't even know where to start.
In February 2023, Ashley's legal team files a motion to dismiss under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. The law allows the use of deadly force if a person believes that that force is necessary to prevent imminent death or to prevent a violent crime without any expectation to retreat.
Doug stopped her from fleeing her home. Well, that would be false imprisonment, and that would qualify as a violent felony, which would give her the right to use deadly force.
Ashley's defense filed a 105-page motion presenting her version of the night she shot Doug. For his family, it was the first time hearing her side.
The story they've made up is as implausible as everything else she ever made up about Doug and their relationship. It's implausible that any of that occurred the way she and her lawyer have told it.
The court found enough merit in Ashley's motion to grant her a hearing. Now the burden of proof shifts to the state to prove that Ashley did not act in self-defense.
The prosecution has to basically put on a trial, but it's just a hearing in front of a judge.
Well, with this hearing, we have the opportunity to put a stop to the proceedings. Then I get my life back.
Doug's family travels to Florida to attend the hearing.
It feels a little weird just because the last time I was here was when my dad was alive.
All right, good morning, everyone. We are on the record in the state of Florida versus Ashley Benefield.
The state calls 8 witnesses, including Doug's family members and law enforcement, who testify that Ashley had no significant injuries to justify self-defense.
Did you have a crime scene technician take photographs of her?
We did.
And why did you want pictures?
I didn't notice any kind of injuries, things that you would typically see during a physical altercation.
For their part, the defense relied solely on the details laid out in the 105-page motion filed before the hearing, calling no witnesses.
There was no independent evidence that refuted her version of events. I believe this motion compels the court to grant it. Thank you for the court's patience.
Judge didn't rule from the bench. They typically do not. After the hearing ended, we just had to wait for a written order.
It would take 2 months, but ultimately the judge would deny Ashley Benefield's Stand Your Ground motion, saying the state had shown the shooting was not in self-defense. Now, out of options, Benefield will have to face a jury of her peers in this courthouse.
And happening right now, potential jurors being questioned in what people are calling the Black Swan trial.
The Black Swan trial.
Black Swan murder trial.
The Black Swan has a catchy ring, and it sensationalizes my life. And it's sad to me that people who don't even know me have this idea of a monster.
But not everybody sees her that way.
We stand with Ashley.
We stand with Ashley. Dozens of protesters here at the Manatee County Courthouse marching in defense of Ashley Benefield.
And the littlest supporter marching out there also happens to be one of Ashley's biggest defenders.
She kept on asking, Mommy, can I go? Can I go? I want to be part of this. I want to stand up for my mommy. I don't want to be without my mommy. And
With Ashley Benefield now facing the possibility of life in prison, the big question is, will the jury believe her?
The entire dynamic of the trial shifting today as Ashley Benefield made her way to the stand.
The stakes for Ashley were extremely high.
I was hoping that they would call Ashley.
There's nowhere to go. I was trapped.
I really just wanted them to see Ashley for Ashley.
I thought he was going to kill me.
Testimony in the so-called Black Swan murder trial happening in Manatee County.
Supporters rallying behind Ashley Benefield. Benefield is the Manatee County woman charged with shooting and killing her husband, Doug Benefield.
After nearly 4 years, Ashley Benefield finally gets her day in court, where she's hoping to prove that she shot her husband, Doug, in self-defense.
This was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder.
All right, State, call your first witness.
The prosecution gets to work building its case.
State calls Stephanie Murphy.
Calling Doug Benefield's family attorney to the stand.
At the time the child was born, did you or Doug know that the child was born?
No, gosh, we didn't know for a good 5 or 6 weeks after she was born.
All right, who's your next witness?
Detective Chris Gillum.
All right.
The state also calls the detective who spoke with Ashley back in 2018 when he investigated her claims that Doug had abused their daughter.
She asked for me to arrest Doug when he came inside the courtroom in front of the presiding judge.
And what was your reaction to that?
That absolutely would not occur.
And how did she take that?
She was upset.
I think it was very important testimony. It was a snapshot into the real Ashley Benefield.
Her tone turned very aggressive, and she says, "You will arrest him in front of the judge, and I will make sure you do it." And she says, "I'll do whatever I have to do to keep my baby, you a-hole."
Ashley's side insists she was only trying to protect her child from a man she was terrified of.
Defense would call Dr. Jason Quintel.
They call a mental health counselor who saw both Doug and Ashley.
Did you conclude whether there was an intimidation issue present?
Ashley stated that she was scared of Doug.
Did you reach any conclusions with respect to Douglas Benefield?
Doug occurred as someone who was domineering, and the terminology that I would use at times would be super controlling. He would fit the stereotype of an alpha male, in my opinion.
The defense also turns to a domestic violence expert to explain why, even though Ashley claimed she was living in fear, it may not have always looked that way from the outside.
How common is it, Mr. Ferris, for a victim of domestic violence to smile and act happy in the company of the abuser?
Very much so, because they're afraid. They found this least resistance. They're trying to not poke the bear, as we'll say.
Doug didn't verbally abuse her, never physically touched her. He would be angry over how she tried to ruin his life, but the anger never came out in inappropriate ways.
Then the defense calls the one person they believe can convince the jury of Ashley's innocence.
The defense calls Ashley Benefield. How are you feeling this morning, Ashley?
Nervous.
The questioning quickly turning to the night of the shooting.
I ran to try to leave the house. He hit me on the side of the head. He had never actually hit me before.
What did you do?
I ran. Doug was standing in the doorway. His face was red. Like the veins were bulging in his neck. The way he was looking at me, it didn't even look like Doug. His eyes were black. I held the gun like in front of me, and I said, "Stop!" And he like turned and he got into this like a fighting stance. I thought he was gonna kill me.
Somehow, Ashley Benefield found the strength to testify on her own behalf. And I thought she did it extremely well. Judge, I wonder, could we have a minute?
Ashley used a lot of theatrics, a lot of, in my opinion, acting. Looking her in the face, it did not seem genuine to me.
Ma'am, there's Kleenexes here next to you. Those.
Okay, thank you.
Even though she cried hysterically numerous times, there was not one tear.
In her cross-examination, prosecutor Suzanne O'Donnell presses Ashley about that moment she says Doug hit her in the head.
You say he slapped you?
I wouldn't know how to classify it. He struck me, he hit me.
Was his hand open or closed?
I don't remember.
Okay. In direct examination, she knew the color of his eyes and the way he was acting. And when I asked her, did he hit you with an open hand or a closed hand, she didn't know. Wouldn't you know if someone hit you with a fist versus an open hand? Judge, if I could have her step down so she can demonstrate.
You may.
I absolutely wanted to get her down off of the stand because she would have been that much closer to the jury. Okay, so he's standing there. He turns to like this and starts moving his arms around.
Like that.
Well, show me. What was he doing?
Kind of like, I don't know, he got like this, and he was like making like fighting motions. I don't know, I'm not a fighter, I don't know.
Okay. This was the time to show the jury exactly what this person was doing. Why were you so scared? And she just couldn't do it. And I believe that that was because it didn't really happen.
And O'Donnell zeroes in on the physical evidence, arguing that it contradicts Ashley's claims of self-defense.
So I want to talk a little bit about this trajectory. The fatal bullet went in the side of the chest and almost came out the other side of the back. Her story was he starts to lunge at her. If she then lifted the gun and shot, it would go in his chest and right out his back. It would not go side to side.
Everybody unanimously agreed that the wound path of that projectile was from front to back, left to right. Well, I don't care how much you would like to move front to back to the side, it is still front to back.
Ashley's action on that day was absolutely justified. She had the right to stand her ground and use force, including deadly force. For the last several years, I've walked hand in hand with Ashley. I'm now going to surrender her fate to you.
So all of you may now retire to consider your verdict.
Any minute now, Ashley Benefield could learn her fate.
I've played out, I guess, both scenarios in my mind.
6 hours into the deliberations, tensions begin building in the jury room.
And then at approximately 10 o'clock, the jurors sent out a note.
When they came back, I feel a sinking feeling. We were heavy-hearted at that moment.
Are you envisioning what it might be like to hear guilty?
Yeah, I've played out, I guess, both scenarios in my mind. I mean, part of this just doesn't seem real. I keep thinking maybe one day I'll wake up from the nightmare and realize that none of this happened.
Jurors still deliberating after closing arguments.
It's 10 p.m. The jury in Ashley Benefield's case has been deliberating for 6 hours. Then, a message from the foreperson.
Yeah, I've received a note from you. It says, unable to come to unanimous verdict.
Even worse than a not guilty would be a hung jury, because then the family has to go through this again. We just need some finality.
But the judge encourages the jurors to keep deliberating and try to come to a consensus.
We'll be in recess until we get another question or a verdict.
And less than an hour later...
Breaking news, we have a verdict.
When I saw that there was a verdict a half an hour later, my heart was in my throat.
We, the jury, find the defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense.
The jury does not find Ashley guilty of second-degree murder. Instead, they convict her of the lesser charge of manslaughter.
We were hopeful for a second-degree murder conviction, but we were very, very satisfied with a manslaughter conviction.
Ashley learns she'll be sentenced at a later date.
The sound was as good as the sight. We're very thankful that she was taken off to jail.
If she hadn't had her gun that night, I know without a shadow of a doubt my daughter would be dead. I am sure of it. Why do they not believe women? Why should women live in fear?
I feel that Ashley was abusing a system that is designed to help people that are victims. sets everyone back and makes it so much harder for those people that really are victims.
But I'll tell you, the hardest part of that verdict was not in the courtroom. It was when we came back to our office without Ashley. Emerson was there waiting for her mom, but she wouldn't leave right around that elevator. She just stayed there.
This case has always been sad to me because there are children involved that had nothing to do with this. Emerson's without her father and probably going to be without her mother now for a long time. Doug's family got justice. Eva's still without her father.
Today kind of just feels like the first day of the rest of my life.
I hope one day me and Emerson will be able to have a relationship where she can come to me with any questions, and I hope that one day I'll be able to explain how great of a father my dad would have been to her and how great he was for the short amount of time that they got to spend together.
Ashley Benefield is scheduled to be sentenced next month. David, she faces up to 30 years in prison.
And as for Doug and Ashley's 6-year-old daughter, Emerson, she's currently living with Ashley's mother now. That's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
Please welcome Rodney Alcala.
I'll take one.
Bachelor number 1.
It was one of the most famous dating shows ever.
Looking back, it is chilling to realize that this iconic show would unknowingly feature a remorseless killer.
The horror story begins. I remember wanting to jump out of the car.
The so-called dating game killer is one of the country's most notorious criminals, but one most people have never heard of.
He had sociopathic personality traits. He had no shame.
He walks up and down the streets and asks people if he could take their picture.
What better place to be a sexual predator than go to a feeding frenzy like New York?
She's been strangled with nylon stockings.
It's the talk of the town.
Rodney Alcala has murdered at least 5 women. The FBI put Rodney Alcala on the 10 most wanted list.
Oh my God, will Alcala get away with it?
The body count is piling up. He goes on the hunt for more victims, and there's absolutely nothing to stop him.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Sometimes I think Chris was probably hitchhiking, probably looking to get away somewhere, and he just probably stopped for her.
She's by herself. She could have met him at a gas station while he's filling up. Can you give me a lift? But somewhere along the lines, I think he was giving her a ride someplace. I don't think she had any indication what was about to happen to her.
Chris was very trusting, so, you know, that was her downfall. My sister Christine was born Christine Ruth Thornton, but we always called her Chris. She was 11 years older than me. Chris was tall. She was 5'10", dark hair, dark eyes, just, you know, a beautiful person inside and out. In the summer of '77, Chris was just 27 years old. Chris was in San Antonio. She was pregnant at the time.
Christine was a free spirit. She kind of went where the wind blew her.
She met up with her boyfriend and, you know, had this crazy idea of going to Montana to pan for gold.
And My understanding is that they were in southwest Wyoming and had an argument ensued between the two of them, and he left her pregnant and alone, and I believe that's the last time anybody had ever seen her.
In the summer of '78, I decided to go down to San Antonio and do some investigating of my own. I actually tried to find her boyfriend, but did not have a good address for him. The San Antonio police refused to take a missing persons report on Chris because she was an adult.
I believe throughout all the years that Christine was missing, I think Kathy was always looking for a way to open up that door of where she is. In '82, this herder out in the middle of nowhere comes across a pile of bones, obviously human remains.
What they found was it was a body of a 25 to 35-year-old female. Along with her bones were also bones of an infant.
There wasn't any identification, and so we remained cold for many years.
And investigators never imagined that those bones would lead them to a notorious serial killer, a man I would later be called upon to prosecute. And this photograph, discovered by police, would lead a heartbroken family to their loved one, missing for almost 40 years. Her smile shared by a tragic list of young women and girls who trusted a charming stranger, only to discover a dark secret that began back in the fall of 1968.
So '68 was tumultuous. It was sort of flower power, reliving. It was quite a era and quite a year.
Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy have been assassinated. Andy Warhol was shot that year. And there have been urban uprisings throughout the 60s.
Being a police officer in Los Angeles, or anywhere in the country for that matter at that time, everything was anti-war, anti-establishment.
And it's commented on by some of the leading vocalists of the day. You had Barry McGuire in 1965 doing Eve of Destruction.
Eastern world, it is exploding.
You had Bob Dylan, of course, doing Hard Rain's Gonna Fall.
Hard rain's gonna fall.
So what we're seeing is the influence of the new freedoms represented by the counterculture be appropriated by mainstream culture. And that includes daytime television. That even includes game shows like The Dating Game.
The Dating Game began with Chuck Barris back in, I believe it was 1965. He had dealings with ABC, and he just came up with the idea, and he pitched it to a couple of people. It caught on right away.
The premise was the female asking questions of three bachelors who sat on the other side of a partition. She wasn't able to see them, of course, and she picked one for a date, and then she met the guy that she had picked, and they were awarded a date.
Looking back, it is chilling to realize that this iconic show, celebrating love and romance, would unknowingly feature a remorseless killer.
And from the mid-'60s onward, Southern California is a mecca for anyone looking to reinvent him or herself and have a fantastic time. They're all partying at some of the hotels on the Strip, like the Chateau Marmont.
Tali Shapiro was an 8-year-old little girl who lived at Chateau Marmont, which is a famous hotel in California.
Her father was a music industry executive. She had a mother and a sister and a brother. And they were living there because their house had gone on fire, and they were staying there temporarily. And a car pulls up alongside of her.
And it's this man who says, "Oh, it's okay, I'm not a stranger. I know your parents. I'm friends with your parents."
And she thought, well, maybe I'll get in the car.
Well, fortunately, a good citizen looks at this and says, I don't like the looks of this.
Tali Shapiro was 8 years old, and it was a beautiful sunny day in September.
And this adorable little girl would skip to school each morning, carefree, loving, wearing her little white Mary Janes. And then the horror story of Tally begins.
I remember the morning was nice and warm because I wore the dress that my nanny had crocheted for me.
And a car pulls up alongside of her, and the man leans out and says, I have a beautiful picture I'd like to show you.
And I guess asked if I needed a ride to school. And I told him I didn't talk to strangers.
And he pulled up alongside of her a little further, kept trolling her.
And that's when he told me he knew my parents. And I really didn't want to get in the car, but I was raised to respect my elders. I got in the car, that's when he asked what time my school started, and then that's when he realized that we had plenty of time and he was going to swing by and show me a poster. You know, I didn't know to fear people.
Well, fortunately, a good citizen looks at this and says, I don't like the looks of this. And he actually follows him to his apartment.
The moment I felt danger was when he wanted to go by his place. And I remember wanting to jump out of the car.
So the Good Samaritan, he actually followed the car to a residence where the man took the little girl out of the car and walked her inside, and that didn't look right.
And he calls the police. He says, you know, this is real hinky looking, I don't like it, there's this little girl, you know, I think you ought to check it out.
I don't remember going up to the apartment, and I don't remember anything after that.
I was driving down Sunset heading toward West Hollywood when I received a call to go see a man about a possible kidnapping. I followed him over to the location. At that time, I thought, okay, I better call in for a backup. So I went and called in and requested a backup unit. I went to the front door and started knocking. I could hear someone running around.
So the man came and he opened up the curtains a little bit and peered out and said, oh, sorry, I was in the shower. I'll be right there.
I see this male person on the other side, no clothes, not dripping with water, no towel. And I said, oh, okay, you need to open the door right now, I need to come in. And he said, wait, let me put my pants on. And I said, okay, you got 3 seconds. I probably waited 5 seconds and I kicked the door in. To the right was a dining room, to the left was a living room, and straight ahead was a kitchen. And here was this little girl, blood all over the place, clothes, shoes, and a dress thrown to one side. There was coins on the floor, and she had this steel bar across her neck, which probably weighed 2 pounds.
And there's an image that I will never forget. It's an image of this pipe used to strangle her with, essentially. Press it against her throat, and more blood than should ever be able to come out of a little 8-year-old girl next to these Mary Jane shoes on the floor of this kitchen.
I looked at her, I thought she was dead, she wasn't breathing. The other officers came around, we were looking for the suspect. I went back to check on Tally, and I just couldn't leave her there like that.
The officer had a sort of a life or death decision to make. Chase this man out the back and catch him, or render life-saving aid to the little girl and save her life. And he chose the little girl.
And as I went back in the kitchen, she started gagging, Tally. So then that put everything into high gear. But when I was yelling, the officer that was covering the back door thought I was asking for help. So he ran to the front to help me. We later found out the suspect escaped through the back door.
Tally was bleeding out, literally clinging to life. Fortunately, there was already an ambulance racing to the scene.
Tally arrived in the emergency room and the doctor said there was no chance of saving her. And after she had been taken by the ambulance, they started looking around the apartment to see if there were any clues as to who the person was.
I found his ID. We determined he was a student at UCLA in the photography department.
And the name of the man who attended UCLA was Rodney Alcala.
They searched that house, and there are references in reports of hundreds and hundreds of photographs of young women and boys in various stages of dress, in various stages of vulnerability that were in Rodney Alcala's possession.
We had to find this Rodney Alcala. We had to get him off the street, because if he would do that to a little 8-year-old girl, there's no telling what he would do.
You know, it was just by, sheer luck that Tally didn't die. She should have died, but she didn't.
She was in a coma for 32 days. Nobody thought that she would survive, and miraculously, she pulled through.
She was able to get back on her feet after several months in the hospital.
My parents mentioned nothing. It was never brought up. It was never spoken about. I remember walking into my classroom and everyone looking at me like I was supposed to be dead.
And her parents had just had enough. They could not stay in California another minute.
They moved out of the country shortly after that. They moved to Mexico. The father wanted to give her a better, safer environment to live in.
And that's where they stayed for the next many years.
Rodney Alcala has gotten away, and now he's fled, and nobody knows where he's gone.
I was police officer with LAPD. This was one of my very first cases, actually, and it was 4 or 5 months old at that time, and he was in the wind. I went out and interviewed a number of his professors at UCLA. One of the things they told me is, you got the wrong guy. Rod Alcala is a super guy. He wouldn't hurt a flea. Really nice guy.
Police wanted to know, who is Rodney Alcala, and why would this well-liked 25-year-old college student so viciously attack an 8-year-old little girl?
This is San Antonio, Texas, home of the Alamo.
Rodney Alcala was born Rodrigo Jacques Alcala Bucor on August 23rd, 1943, in San Antonio, Texas. He had an older brother, Raul. He had an older sister, and then he had a younger sister.
His family lived in Mexico for a while.
The grandma passed away, and the father left the family.
They ended up moving to Los Angeles area to Monterey Park. He had everything he wanted, Alcala. He went to Catholic schools. He went to, private schools.
Everyone who knew him said he was a kind boy, a respectful boy, and highly intelligent.
Rodney Alcala had every advantage that somebody could have in life. He had a mother who loved him, which is a big deal psychologically. He had friends. He had brothers and sisters who all turned out to be very successful.
His older brother was already at West Point, so this is a pretty, patriotic family.
And then he joined the Army in the early 60s, and that's where the trouble really began for Rodney Alcala.
So Alcala didn't fare well in the Army. He went AWOL a few times, got in some trouble.
As it turns out, this bright, handsome young man with the promising future had nightmarish urges that he refused to ignore.
So 1963, gets a pass in the military. He ultimately goes to New York. While in New York, he assaults a girl. He hits her over the head with a Coke bottle. That girl was able to run away.
He had sociopathic personality traits. He had no shame, and he didn't, feel guilty about anything that he did.
The military felt that he had had a nervous breakdown. That was their analysis of it. The psychiatrists at the hospital felt it was a lot more serious than that. But he was discharged honorably, and not a blemish on his record.
So he ends up coming back to California, where he enrolls in the UCLA Fine Arts program as a photography major.
So Rodney Alcala is actually attending UCLA and living less than a mile away from Chateau Marmont when he attacks Tally Shapiro in 1968, and then seems to vanish.
I was pretty much convinced he'd gone to Mexico, because he had relatives in Mexico.
So it's been 3 years now since the rape of Taylor Shapiro. The FBI eventually became interested in the case and put Rodney Alcala on the 10 most wanted list.
So I get a phone call and it's the FBI in New Hampshire. Say, hey, we've got your guy in custody, Rodney James Alcala.
It seemed like an open and shut case, but it was just the beginning of what would become a pattern of catch and release that would continue for more than a decade. While the FBI is on the hunt for Rodney Alcala, he's actually living on the East Coast under an assumed name, John Berger.
So in 1968, John Berger walks into NYU and applies to their School of the Arts. So there he was in New York, a fugitive, now for 3 years.
What better place to be a sexual predator than go to a feeding frenzy like New York?
So New York in the early 70s is certainly, from the civic standpoint, rather challenged. It's Mayor Lindsay's second term. He's having a hard time delivering services to people. Snow removal, garbage. Police feel like they're under siege. Crime is certainly up, violent crime.
And it's during this crime wave in New York City that Alcala is able to fly under the radar, and he strikes again.
Cornelia Crilly grew up in Queens. She had 2 sisters and 2 brothers, Catholic family, very well respected in the neighborhood, had a very happy childhood.
She was beautiful. She had long, beautiful Irish hair and Irish eyes, big smile, very friendly and funny.
A few years after high school, Cornelia met Dream Man, Leon Borstein, and they began dating.
I was 29 or 30. She was probably 23 at the time.
She wanted to become a TWA stewardess. At that time, they were known as ambassadors to the world and had a lot of prestige. And once she was accepted, she got an apartment with a couple of her stewardess friends on East 83rd Street.
In fact, in the east side of Manhattan, an area becomes known as the Girl Belt because for the first time, young women are living on their own and experiencing their careers as they never had in the past.
I had gotten a job in a Brooklyn DA's office. So in the middle of the day, I got a call from her mother saying she couldn't find her. I said, okay, when I leave, I'll go find her. I'm sure she's at the apartment.
Mrs. Crilly was trying to get in touch with her daughter, and she didn't answer the phone.
She was living in a building where I could go into the building without a key. I knocked on the door, and there was no response. That's when I called the cops. And they came over. I was at the front door when they broke into the back window. They opened the door. They told me that she had been killed.
She was down on the floor of her New York apartment. She had been strangled with nylon stockings and also had bite marks on her breast. She'd been raped and brutally murdered.
We got a call from the police department that somebody still had to identify the body. So I went over to the morgue.
The Crilly case is very unique because she just moved in the apartment. She's a new girl. No one knew her. So that was a drawback for the detectives in the beginning.
New York PD has this brutal crime scene and no suspects.
We had almost 2,000 murders that year. It wasn't peace, love, and joy. Detectives had a lot of dead ends with this case. They had nothing, unfortunately, and then the case went cold.
Well, still enrolled as a student at NYU, Rodney Alcala, a.k.a. John Berger, actually spent his summers as a counselor at an arts camp in New Hampshire.
So in August of 1971, 2 campers take the little dirt road down to the post office, and all of a sudden it starts pouring. They run inside the post office to get cover, and they start looking around to see what is in the post office.
And there's the good old FBI 10 most wanted list.
They go from one to the next to the next. Each one looks more horrible than the preceding one.
They look at this and they're like, hey, that's Mr. Berger.
So they go back to the camp and they tell the head counselor, we saw this 10 most wanted poster of somebody who looks like our John Berger. So he said, don't say anything to anyone and I'll go down to the post office and take a look. So he comes back, he calls the FBI, and he says, I think we have your man.
I get a phone call and it's the FBI in New Hampshire. Say, say, hey, we've got your guy in custody, Rodney James 𝐅𝐔𝐋. I said, you've got him in custody. Fantastic.
This has been 3 years that 𝐅𝐔𝐋 has been on the lam and that Hodel has been looking for him.
So on the 12th of August, 1971, I, with a partner, picked him up, took him to the airport, flew him back. We got our guy, you know, he's going to prison for at least 20, 30 years. Parents didn't want Tally to testify. They said it would be too traumatic.
So I think the big fear was, oh my God, you know, will 𝐅𝐔𝐋 get away with it?
And what's dangerous in the case of a sociopath is they're very persuasive.
In 1971, Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋 is arrested in New Hampshire and brought back to LA to finally face charges for the rape and attempted murder of Tally Shapiro.
He was very low-key, kind of came off a bit introverted, but I could see his mind functioning. And that's what made this guy so dangerous. He was able to read people very well and stay a step or two or three ahead of them. For him, it was all a kind of a chess game.
Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋 is charged with all the crimes against Tally Shapiro, which included kidnapping, rape, child molestation, and torture.
It turns out that because Tally and her family were in Mexico, the only charge they could put on him was a plea deal for child molestation. No brutality, no bashing, no raping, no almost killing.
And they wound up giving Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋 a plea deal where he pled to what's known as an indeterminate sentence. He had 1 year to life in California State Prison.
With an indeterminate sentence, it's sliding, it's not determined. And then the parole board has more flexibility in determining whether someone's been rehabilitated or whether they're a danger to the community. This meant that Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋 would have yearly parole reviews. And what's dangerous in the case of a sociopath is they're very persuasive.
And he's getting therapy in prison, and they believe that he has shown enough progress that in 34 months, the California Parole Board released Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋 back into the world.
Not even 3 years. Good behavior, they said. Model prisoner, they said. And he was out on the streets again.
The heartbreaking part about this is that they could have kept him, but in those days, that was an era where they believed so strongly in the power of therapy. But when it comes to fixing psychopaths, it doesn't work.
So 𝐅𝐔𝐋 is the luckiest man in the world. He's out on parole, and he's having the best time. He's photographing people, and he one day decides to take a ride, and he starts strolling again.
True to form, 2 months later, Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋 is caught smoking marijuana on the cliffs of Sunset Beach in Huntington Beach with a 13-year-old girl. And he was caught by park rangers.
So he gets arrested yet again. And this time, he gets 2.5 years, and he's taken to prison.
In June 1977, Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋 is released again from California State Prison, and he goes in, different parole officer this time, and he asks for permission to go on some vacations.
And the parole officer, miraculously, says, sure, go ahead. So Rodney heads off to New York. July 1977 in New York was a difficult time for everyone. It was hot, it was steamy, the garbage wasn't being collected.
When you used to read the newspaper, Daily News or the Post, the first 20 pages are just violence, 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 every day.
There were a lot of murders going on, including Son of Sam.
During the time of Son of Sam in 1977, the city was afraid. Look, you had a lunatic running around, shooting men and women in cars.
Police in New York are on special alert tonight for a psychopathic killer who calls himself Son of Sam.
His favorite targets, young white women with long dark hair.
During that time, 𝐅𝐔𝐋 is taking a lot of photographs. He walks up and down the streets and asks people if he can take their picture. Young boys, young girls, older women, doesn't matter. He just wants to take photographs. And a young woman says, sure, you can take my photograph. And they start talking and they get along. It's very nice. Her name is Ellen Hover.
Ellen was strikingly beautiful. She had long dark hair and long slender arms and legs and carried herself like a dancer.
Her father was the owner of Ciro's in Hollywood. a well-known nightclub where Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin and other people appeared.
Ellen was very trusting of other people. She came from a Hollywood family, grew up in Beverly Hills, and then Great Neck, and then Manhattan. Ellen loved people.
On July 13th and 14th was the famous New York City blackout.
This is an ABC News special report.
New York City went totally dark last night, and tonight large parts of the city still are without power.
It's lawlessness. People loot, crime goes through the roof. You know, people are afraid.
There's no refrigeration, no water, no lights on one of the hottest, steamiest nights of the year in New York City.
It was a very unsettling, hard time for most people.
On July 15th, Ellen Hover goes missing.
That evening, friends tried to get in touch with Ellen. Nobody could.
The phone rang. It was Ellen's mother, Yvonne Schwartz. Mrs. Schwartz asked me if I had heard from Ellen since the weekend, and I said no. The next thing I knew, I was watching the 11 o'clock news, and there was Ellen's picture. New York heiress missing.
And the next day, when the police showed up at her door, they looked inside and they found on her calendar there was an entry that said she was meeting John Berger.
New York City went totally dark last night, and tonight large parts of the city...
They research back, and they try to ID who John Berger is.
You're talking about a woman who goes missing in New York City pre-computer. And so Rodney Alcala / John Berger was never really on the radar of the New York City Police Department.
So Alcala goes back to LA, and he's there actually trying to find a job.
Rodney Alcala gets a job with the Los Angeles Times working as a typesetter.
You have to put this into perspective. On the lam for 3 years, 10 most wanted, 2 stints in jail, felon. He applies under his own name, Rodney Alcala, and he gets the job.
He actually would bring in photographs to show some of the people at his work. A lot of the photos were of nude girls. And I think it was like the time when people didn't really question it. You weren't like, oh my God, you're a pedophile. Like instead they were like, oh, he's just kind of strange. You know, he's very artsy.
So 5 months after Alcala is returned to LA, the FBI is actually able to connect the dots between Rodney Alcala, the name John Berger, and the notes found in Ellen Hover's calendar. So Rodney Alcala was eventually questioned by the FBI in relation to the disappearance of Ellen Hover, and he admitted being with her.
Where did you meet Ellen on the 15th?
He said he had taken her up to Westchester to take a picture. They had a lovely time, and that was it. Never saw her again.
Are they going to be called like rocking her off? That was it.
At that point, they still had not found a body.
Other than him admitting to the crime, saying, I killed her, there wasn't enough to arrest him.
This is Bill McCreary in North Tarrytown with a story about the discovery of the body of a millionaire's daughter missing for the past 11 months.
Ultimately, she's found. It's almost a year later. She's found up in an area by the Rockefeller estate.
They found clothing of hers nearby. They went back to the same site, and they discovered her remains.
But it's all skeletal. She's identified through a dental comparison.
Well, police are able to positively identify the remains of Ellen Hover. There is no forensic evidence that leads them to her killer.
1970s was considered a serial killer central.
You have the Hillside Strangler, the Night Stalker, 2 freeway killers. You have the Bedroom Basher. Elsewhere, you have Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy killing people in Chicago.
Recently, there's been a rash of mass murders.
1977 through 1978, many women were murdered.
Police in this era are lacking a lot of the investigative tools they have today. There's no DNA. There's no surveillance camera around every corner. People aren't walking around with a GPS in their pocket.
All of these things lead to this sort of perfect storm for Rodney Alcala, where he's able to remain one step ahead of police, and he goes on the hunt for more victims, and there's absolutely nothing to stop him.
Jill Barkham was a 19-year-old girl in New York who was adventuresome and wanted to take a trip with a friend of hers. And so she left New York for Los Angeles.
Jill and I were very close as children growing up. We were often mistaken as twins. Jill had a very free spirit about her.
Bruce was very sad when she left New York, was very scared for her, being so young at 19 years old.
So November 10th, 1977, I called home and there was crying in the background. They said, you need to come home. You need to come home. And that's all they would say.
Jill Barkham was found off of Franklin Canyon Road, and it was down the street from Marlon Brando's home at the time. She was found bent over, half naked. Her head was facing the dirt.
She has multiple ligatures on her neck. It was a brutal crime scene.
I came into a house of siblings, distraught, righteously so, and heard it from my mother directly that my sister was dead.
Her face was unrecognizable. Her brother said at the funeral that he couldn't even recognize his sister. It was so mutilated.
I had night terrors the day that Jill's body arrived. It wasn't just murder, it wasn't just rape, it was brutal, it was sadistic. And nobody could understand why the things happened to her.
They thought perhaps this could be the work of the Hillside Strangler, because that's what the Hillside Strangler did. He strangled women and left them on the side of the road.
And it complicated this investigation because Jill Barkham had a friend when she got out to LA that was actually abducted and murdered by the Hillside Strangler.
In the end, the police were unable to link the murder of Jill Barkham to the Hillside Strangler, and the case just went cold. That meant the string of murders of young girls and women continued.
Georgia Wickstead was 27 years old. She was absolutely gorgeous. She was a nurse that worked for cardiac care.
She was from Los Angeles. She worked out of the Centinela Hospital and just recently moved to Malibu.
Every morning she would pick up another nurse and they would drive to the hospital together to do their shift. And one morning she didn't show up.
So the police were called to do a welfare check of her in her home. It was discovered that her window was open and the screen was removed. When the police entered her home, there was blood everywhere. Her body was completely naked and strewn on the floor, kind of posed open.
The viciousness and the sadism involved in her murder is so disturbing and so profound.
There was a handprint that was found on the brass bedding, but there was no one to match the palm print to. And again, that case went cold.
And the third person who was found dead in the same way as the other two was Charlotte Lamb.
Charlotte Lamb, in 1978, was a legal secretary living in the Santa Monica area. She had called some friends one night to go out and go dancing in Santa Monica. Her friends decided not to go. Her body was later found in El Segundo, miles away, in an apartment complex she had no connection to.
She had been strangled and she'd been brutally raped and murdered. Her arms had been folded behind her back, which made her back arch to expose her breasts. She'd been posed. It's just very disturbing and incredibly sad.
I met with Rodney 5 or 6 times. I administered assessments with regard to his sexual interests. Many times the rapist, killer, antisocial person will pose dead bodies, and they do want law enforcement and other people to see this. And there's a message in that. The message for Rodney is that I am here, you will remember me.
So instead of hiding in the shadows, Rodney Alcala is almost fearless, and he puts himself out there in perhaps the most public way possible.
Rodney going on the dating game is a great example of him being predatory, him being confident, narcissistic, and of course he wouldn't go on unless he would win.
And 5, 4, 3.
He always wins.
Bachelor number one is a successful photographer. You might find him skydiving or motorcycling. Please welcome Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋. Please welcome Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋.
Bachelor number one,
Yes.
what's your best time?
Night times when it really gets good.
In retrospect, it has got to be one of the creepiest moments on TV.
He says, I always get my girl.
The so-called dating game killer is one of the country's most notorious criminals.
They told us that they had found Robin. It was devastating.
There's nothing that hurts like that. Nothing.
Her plan was to shoot 𝐅𝐔𝐋. She wanted to avenge her daughter.
He was a sadistic killer who deserved death.
Model prisoner, they said, and he was out on the streets again.
A pattern of catch and release that would continue for more than a decade.
All these pictures that the police had from a serial killer. His victims are still out there.
So by 1978, the body count is piling up. Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋 has murdered at least 5 women on 2 coasts and almost murdered a little girl, and he's just about to make his primetime debut.
In the 70s, I was the executive producer and Ellen was the contestant coordinator. The show that Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋 appeared on aired in September 1978.
The dating game appearance is just a bizarre part about this case. I think that what it reflects is the narcissism and the ego and the arrogance of a serial killer. So he actually tries out for Chuck Berry Productions and becomes a bachelor for the dating game.
He was very striking. I don't know, there was a boldness about him, and he had long black hair. He was just a striking looking person.
In terms of putting him on as a contestant, I think on the form I wrote NW, which was my symbol for no way, no darn way, is this guy gonna be on the show? Because I noticed that he had a very strange personality.
It's like, are you kidding? He's so attractive. Everyone's gonna love him. All the women are gonna love him.
And I said, all right, we'll put him on a show, but we've got to surround him with 2 guys that have personalities and that are respectable and decent and fun.
My name is Jed Mills. When I got the job on the dating game, they said, Jed, you're going to be bachelor number 2, so you'll be sitting in the center. Bachelor number 1 was a little creepy. I noticed that right away. In the green room, he jumps in, he says, I always get my girl.
Number 1, would you say hello to Cheryl, please? We're going to have a great time together, Cheryl.
Immediately did not like this guy.
And here we go.
Bachelor number 1,
Yes.
what's your best time?
One of our edicts was to make the show much sexier and much more provocative than the show in the 60s. Everything was sexy in the 70s. So we pushed the envelope.
The best time is at night. At night times when it really gets good.
The sexual innuendo intrigued the audience. They loved it, and they started clapping. Yeah, they loved this guy.
Oddly enough, 42 years later, I still remember Cheryl Bradshaw. She did voices.
And she says, suppose I was auditioning you for a private class, and you're a dirty old man.
You're a dirty old man. Take it.
Come on, over here.
In retrospect, it has got to be one of the creepiest moments on TV.
The audience is beside themselves. They love this.
Cheryl Bradshaw asked about what kind of food he would be if she was going to serve him for dinner.
I'm called the banana, and I look really good.
Can you be a little more descriptive?
Peel me.
In retrospect, it sounds horrible, but at the time, we were looking for raunchy, sexy answers, and that was one. Taken in context now, oh my God.
Rodney's motives for going on the dating game are, in my opinion, part of his personality disorder. He wants a lot of attention and he believes he should have it. He's quite bright and he wants the world to know who he is.
When it became time for the Bachelorette to choose number 1, number 2, or number 3, she said,
Well, I like bananas, so I'll take 1.
Number 1. That's your number 1. All right. This is your date to Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋. Rodney, come on, say hello.
She seemed very excited about seeing him. And when he came around, I would say it was a pretty lukewarm togetherness.
She called the office the next day and spoke to Ellen.
She said, Ellen, I can't go out with this guy. There's weird vibes that are coming off of him. He's very strange. I'm not comfortable. Is that going to be a problem? And of course I said no.
I would be very interested in knowing what happened in the days after when the person who chose him would not date him.
Jill Parenteau was a 21-year-old college student and data entry worker. She lived in an apartment by herself.
On June 13th, she went to a Dodger game and came home and was never heard from again.
The next day, she never showed up at work.
When law enforcement entered her home, she was found in her bedroom. Her body was lying next to the bed, very similar to Charlotte Lamb's, where she was laid on her back, fully naked. She had a pillow up behind her back that propped her breasts up.
So this is, again, another avoidable set of killings by this guy that should have stayed in prison. But he didn't even break stride on the continued crimes that he kept committing.
My mom's plan was to shoot 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋.
In those days, they didn't have metal detectors, and they didn't use them, so she got into the courtroom.
She really didn't care about anything else at that point. She wanted to avenge her daughter.
In 1979, Rodney was living at his mother's house where he had a separate entrance, and perhaps he lived there because he didn't have to pay any rent.
He had taken a lot of nude photos, and he would send these photos to New York and get paid for them. They would go into pornography magazines. That's what he did.
Not only was Rodney on the lam for 3 years, 10 most wanted, 34 months in prison for tally, 2.5 years in prison for a felony of giving drugs to a minor. He's out. He's free. He's on the prowl again.
On June 20th, 1979, Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 leaves his mother's house and drives to Huntington Beach. And he starts in a place called Sunset Beach, which is a little bit north on Pacific Coast Highway, and he runs into a 17-year-old girl on roller skates named Lori Wirtz.
I was with my friend Patty, and we decided to go to Sunset Beach. We were approached by 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋.
And he says, I'm a photographer, and hey, if you could just, skate this way, I'll take some photos.
And I said, oh, that's okay, I'll just help him out.
And there's a series of these photographs that are taken by Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋. He was a formally trained photographer, which really played into his method of luring these women and young girls into vulnerable positions.
It's my opinion with regard to Rodney that deviant behavior is always preceded by deviant fantasy. The taking the pictures, going around looking for little girls, sizing people up.
is a part of the constellation of the Rodney Alcala killing machine. The encounter with Lori Wirtz is very important for two different reasons. Number one, it shows that he's actually down in Huntington Beach that day, which he later denies. And it also shows that he's actively hunting for his next victim.
He was asking me all kinds of questions, like where I'm from, my name, my age. He tried really hard to get me in the car. He tried to get me in the car and leave my friend on the beach.
She doesn't bite, won't get in his car.
He started to drive away, and I did see that he was driving toward Huntington Beach.
Huntington Beach in 1979 in June was chock full of kids and sunbathers and rollerbladers and people walking on the boardwalks and just having fun.
The vibe in Huntington Beach back in the 70s was pretty easygoing. You felt safe.
Robin Samso was a 12-year-old, blonde, blue-eyed poster child for athleticism and healthy lifestyle.
I'm Robin's oldest sister. We are 2 of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls.
Robin was the baby of the family. Her brothers, sisters, mother all doted over Robin.
She always had a spirit about her. I mean, everybody that met her fell in love with her.
Rodney Alcala winds up on the beach talking to Bridget Wilbert and Robin Samso.
When Robin and I crossed 14th Street is when I believe he spotted us.
And what he's doing is he's saying, hey, I'm a photographer, you're beautiful, you could be a model, how about you let me take pictures?
And I was having none of it. I was like, no, no. And he reached out and put his hand on Robin's leg. And that's when I grabbed her. I said, like, no, this isn't good.
So one of the moms comes over and is like, who are you? Why are you talking to him? And he scurries off like a cockroach.
Robin had to be at a dance class at 4 o'clock, so she and Bridget went back to Bridget's house.
It was time for Robin to be going because she needed to be in the ballet studio to answer phones. That was how she paid for her ballet.
Robin was running late, so Bridget let her use her bike.
Go get my bike. I said, and don't stop. It was very important to me to say that.
He's in his car. He had maps to Southern California. He had blacked out windows. He had this rolling trap to try to get people in it.
And then my house phone rang, and it was one of Robin's brothers. And he said, is Robin still with you? Has she left? Because she hasn't shown up to ballet.
And there's not a sign of anything, no bike, no person on the side of the road, nothing.
Mom began to worry, and still an hour or so later, when Robin still hadn't returned, she called the police to file a missing persons report.
That was my mom's baby, and my mom cried every day.
Bridget was later introduced to a sketch artist to compile a composite of the individual they'd been talking to on the beach.
And when I was done, I was like, that's him. That is him.
It's Rodney Alcala. I mean, you look at that and it's Rodney Alcala.
Approximately 12 days after Robin went missing, a park ranger in the Sierra Madres at a location called Chantry Flats located some human remains.
But she's been scavenged. And what that means is animals have eaten her.
During their search of the area, they also found a shoe that was identified as belonging to Robin and a beach towel.
And that's how they found this beautiful 12-year-old girl.
I remember I was laying on the couch and the doorbell rang. And I answered the door, and it was the police. They came in and they told us that they had found Robin. And my mom broke down, as well as everybody else, my brothers and I. It was devastating.
Her mother, wanted to see her daughter's body, and they had to explain to her that there is no body. There's a skull and there's bones.
My mom she was never the same. It's like her life just had this big empty hole and everybody else was just on the outside looking in.
They arrest Rodney Alcala at his mother's house in Monterey Park.
After that, they obtained a search warrant for his mother's residence where he was living.
They get inside Rodney Alcala's residence and they see a receipt for a self-storage facility in the city of Seattle. So in really good heads-up police work. Paperwork is not a part of the search warrant, so they cannot collect it. But it's in plain sight, so they write down the information.
One of his sisters went to visit Alcala in jail, and they started talking about the storage locker.
And Rodney Alcala is overheard saying words to the effect of, well, it's good that they don't know about the storage locker.
The cops actually overheard the conversation.
And they get inside and they find a treasure trove of evidence. I mean, it breaks the case. They arrest Rodney Alcala, they bring him to Huntington Beach, and they interview him.
Can you show around until any comments have been?
After the police interview him, he's very savvy and he gives up very little information and he essentially denies all wrongdoing. They get up to this storage locker in the city of Seattle.
They find thousands of pictures of young people, older people, all kinds of people in compromised positions.
They also find various forms of jewelry, a bunch of different earrings and little keepsakes. Those are trophies.
For Rodney, it's his vehicle for power and control. That's why he keeps things.
I remember them asking my mom to the police department to come and identify some things that they found at a locker in Washington.
Two of the earrings found were gold ball earrings. Robin was described as wearing those earrings on the day that she disappeared.
In 1980, Rodney Alcala was tried for the murder of Robin Samso.
One of the stories that Marianne Connolly, Robin's mom, told was that during the 1980 case, she actually showed up with a gun.
Her plan was to shoot Alcala. She really didn't care about anything else at that point. She wanted to avenge her daughter.
In those days, they didn't have metal detectors, or they didn't use them, so she got into the courtroom.
I remember she was very calm. She just kept saying, everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
The trial began, and she had her hand on her purse, and she was ready to kill the man who had murdered her daughter.
I do remember her telling me that she heard Robin's voice and told her not to do it. So she had changed her mind.
On May 8th, 1980, the jury on the Robin Samso case deliberated less than 5 hours.
Rodney Alcala was convicted and sentenced to death. He was taken to San Quentin, where he was put on death row. Several years later, an appeal came up. And to everyone's shock and sorrow and horror, the case was repealed.
The verdict was overturned by the California Supreme Court because the justices determined that the jurors in the trial had been improperly informed of Alcala's prior sex crimes.
I think that there's been a gross miscarriage of justice for being found guilty of something that I didn't do.
In 1984, we learned that Alcala was getting a new trial. Once again, my mother was completely destroyed.
Just can't believe that we have to be punished for what he did. And that's really what it amounts to. We're the ones that are being punished. It means nothing to him.
In the 1986 retrial of Rodney Alcala, a new prosecutor was assigned. He was very confident in his ability to be able to get a conviction on that. 7 years to the day of Robin Samso's disappearance, the second jury convicted Rodney Alcala and also recommended that he be sentenced to die.
The second time he was found guilty, and he got the death penalty again, and we were extremely happy.
One would think that's the end. He's now going to spend the rest of his life on death row until he gets executed. Well, that wasn't the case. In 2001, Rodney's death penalty was again overturned.
At this point, it's important to remember that Rodney Alcala has been in custody ever since being accused of murdering Robin Samso in '79. He's now 58 years old, and life behind bars has taken its toll, not only on Rodney Alcala, but also on the victims' families who've been trying to achieve justice.
Twice Alcala has been convicted and sentenced to death. Twice the convictions were reversed on appeal.
The main reason was an ineffective assistance of counsel claim, meaning that Rodney's attorney had not put forth a strong enough defense on his behalf.
My mom really kind of lost it then.
Every time this happens, it's like losing Robin all over again. I don't know if you've ever lost a child, but there's nothing that hurts like that. Nothing.
Amazingly, at this point, Rodney Alcala has escaped the death penalty 2 times, and now these victims and these families are going to be turning to me and my team to ensure that he's punished for this once and for all. This case was assigned to me back in 2003 when my boss came in and essentially gave me the rundown on it and said that it was going to be a tough one.
That's when Matt Murphy decided to go back to the evidence. And he had that pouch of jewelry that was recovered in the Seattle storage locker reanalyzed for DNA.
Which meant that Rodney's DNA could be put up against the DNA that had been taken decades earlier from the people whom we all believed he had murdered. The DNA matched Charlotte Lamb, Jill Parento, Georgia Wixted, and Jill Barkham.
At that point, Rodney Alcala is clearly now known as a serial killer.
When you get a case like this, the first thing you do is you meet with the family members, and it really drives you. And they say you see the reflection of your victim in the eyes of the people who love them.
I forget a lot of things, except the most important thing I can't forget, and that's her and how she died.
I was the same exact age as Robin Samso. We were both 12 years old in 1979, and you connect with your victim.
Matt Murphy was a young, talented, brilliant prosecutor, and the Alcala case would be his 107th homicide.
And now we're going to be in one of my courts in front of one of my judges, and I was going to do everything I could to make sure that he faced justice for what he did.
The third death penalty trial was set for 2010.
Matt Murphy and I ended up being co-counsel on the case once we brought our LA cases down to Orange County.
So we had all these really good professionals that came together.
I came to know Rodney Alcala by being on the Orange County panel of expert witnesses. I met with Rodney. We met a total of 18 hours over a number of days.
And this third time around, 66-year-old Rodney Alcala decides he'll represent himself.
He is a narcissist. He has a genius IQ measured by some. So he's very brilliant and thinks that translates into being able to be a good lawyer for himself in the case.
Alcala's choice to represent himself was a message to Mr. Murphy that he is equal to him. Mr. Alcala's perceptions about his own superiority should never, ever be underestimated.
She'd been gagged with a t-shirt shoved down her mouth. I wanted the jury to see the level of violence because one of the things that we needed to prove was torture, so that we needed to prove he intended to inflict pain on these victims.
Alcala would strangle the women into unconsciousnness, wait till they wake up, and then strangle them again. He knew exactly what he's doing, and he enjoyed what he was doing.
So these are the facts of the Samso case.
Because Rodney Alcala was representing himself, he got to cross-examine the witnesses, and then, of course, questioned Robin Samso's mom.
This is what they looked like.
He was questioning my mother about the earrings, trying to create doubt. Alcala tried to argue with my mother.
All the jury sees is the man who murdered this poor woman's daughter cross-examining her.
It was so hard watching her that I think the three of us just sat there and sobbed.
Robin Samso's day in court is today. You make sure that he is held responsible for what happened to that little girl.
Murphy in his closing arguments, I mean, they were fantastic.
He got her into his car, and he drove her up to those mountains, and Rodney Alcala smashed her face in when she was still alive. He brutalized her.
He was rattled after my closing argument, because that's when he first learned, he wasn't as smart as he thought he was.
The day the verdict was read, the courtroom was very still and very quiet.
We, the jury, further find and affix the degree thereof, murder in the first degree.
The verdict was guilty on all charges, across the board, all 5 murders. The evidence that we put in for the penalty phase of the trial focused largely on his prior sexual assaults of Tali Shapiro.
When Matt reached out to me in 2010, he was pretty adamant that he really needed me to come forth and help put Alcala away.
So now we've come full circle from 68 to 79. So bringing Tali Shapiro in as the one who lived, as the one who got away, is very important for a jury to see what a monster Rodney Alcala is.
I was there for the Samso family. I've never been the victim. I've always been the survivor.
If you decide that the death penalty is appropriate punishment, you shouldn't feel too good about it.
After hearing all the evidence, the jury went back to deliberate one more time, and they came back with a verdict in a little less than 2 hours.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, determine that the penalty to be imposed upon defendant Rodney James Alcala to be death.
I feel like Robin's life meant something, even in 12 years. She stopped him from killing anybody else. And I believe that if you would have told her that God was going to use her for this purpose, she would have been okay with it.
I just pray that I live long enough to watch him be executed. I only wish that I could be the one to administer the injection.
In 2019, the state of California placed a moratorium on the death penalty. So that meant that all prisoners on death row, and this included Rodney Alcala, received a stay of execution. This did mean, though, that Robin Samso's mother would not see Rodney Alcala executed.
July 23rd, 2019, my mom passed away. She wanted to see that day that Alcala leaves this earth, that he just does not breathe anymore. And it's unfair. It's unfair. Somebody so cruel and evil.
Cold case investigators tonight saying they have solved 2 of New York City's most notorious murders.
New York had been investigating cases involving Rodney Alcala, a murder in 1971 and a murder in 1977.
Although Alcala is already on death row in California, he will be extradited here to go on trial for killing the 2 New York women.
They decided to charge Rodney with the 2 New York murders.
He conceded that he did kill the 2 women in question.
I was surprised that he pled guilty. I think ultimately he knew he was going to be convicted.
Mr. Alcala got 25 years to life, which is the highest sentence under the law.
After the trial, the Huntington Beach Police Department released hundreds of the photos that they found in that Seattle locker to the general public.
Police don't know if any of the people in these pictures were victims of 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋, but hope the public might be able to help identify them.
After the Huntington Beach Police Department released those photographs, the decades-old mystery of Christine Thornton was about to come full circle.
My son sent this email to me with all these pictures in it that the police had from a serial killer. That was her. That was definitely her.
Dead. She just vanished out of their lives.
In '82, this herder out in the middle of nowhere comes across a pile of bones, obviously human remains.
Several initial deputies responded along with detectives, and what they found was it was a body of a 25 to 35-year-old female.
They also found the bones of an unborn child mixed in, largely all intact. The clothing was still there. Even some jewelry were all located.
They couldn't determine a cause of death. What they believed was that it was possibly a strangulation because one of the pant legs was tied in a ligature.
The detectives at that time they used the skull and sent it off to the crime lab in order to get a reconstruction of what they felt this person looked like. They determined that it was a young female and brunette.
They unfortunately weren't able to identify her, and the case went cold. In 2013, several of the detectives, including myself, were assigned specific cold cases. So this box was almost falling apart when I initially was assigned this case. There was still bone fragment and skin tissue saved at the crime lab after all those years.
If you have DNA, you run it. And then you try to find out by sending it down through CODIS and missing persons to find out if you can get a match.
CODIS refers to the Combined DNA Index System. It was created in 1998. DNA is entered into a national database, and this helps the authorities find missing people and also solve crimes.
I was basically told it was now a waiting game. I honestly thought I'd be 10, 20 years retired before I'd get a phone call saying that they'd identified her.
So in 2013, my son sent an email to me knowing that he had an aunt that he had never met. He knew the story, that she went missing, and he came across this article with all these pictures in it that the police had from a serial killer.
Her son found the website that had all the pictures that they found in 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋's locker up in Seattle.
She looked through all these photographs and kept stopping at that one photograph of beautiful brunette seated on the back of a motorcycle.
And I'm like, I think that's Chris. And sure enough, I looked at her little pinky toe, which I remember. It just was very distinctive. It curled up on her other toes, and I kind of knew that was her. That was definitely her.
At that point is when she decided to submit her DNA sample as a reference to hopefully identify Christine.
Detective Sheeman came to my office to tell me that they had a match and an identification.
Just shy of 2 years later is when I was off duty and I decided to check my email. The email I received identified my victim from Granger as Christine Ruth Thornton.
So this is a copy of the photo that was found in Rodney 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋's possession. Trying to match this photo out in the Granger Prairie seems almost impossible, but we were able to match this photograph up just based off of 2 different ridges. You can actually hold this picture up and actually show that this is almost the exact area that this photograph potentially was taken back in 1977. And here we are in 2020. It was pretty shocking to find this area and to know what transpired here all those years ago. We spoke to detectives with the Huntington Beach Police Department and put a timeline together.
So in July of 1977, with the permission of his parole officer, he's allowed to travel back to New York. And Rodney Alcala wasn't flying. Rodney Alcala was driving. So Rodney Alcala leaves New York, comes back to Los Angeles.
And we determined around the time that Christine was killed, he had been traveling across the nation. The motorcycle was actually owned by Rodney Alcala, and they were able to find that motorcycle in his possession.
There's no rhyme or reason how these 2 people, one so good and one not, cross paths and end up there.
I thought we had enough evidence to possibly charge him, but before we did that, I wanted to speak with him.
I've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews in my career, but I told myself, how the hell do you interview a serial killer?
It's 2016, 6 years after Rodney Alcala has been convicted for the murders of Robin Samsoe and the other women. He's 73 years old and his health is failing. He's confined to a bed at Corcoran State Prison, and that's where Wyoming officials come to confront him for the murder of Christine Thornton.
As we got in there, it was dingy-colored peach in Alcala's medical cell.
It was like something off a horror movie, paint peeling off the walls, flies buzzing around the room. It's something that I'll never forget, seeing him lying in this bed. And I remember looking at him going, this is him. I identified myself, read him his rights, and we started pulling out photographs of the original crime scene.
Now he knew why we were there.
This area look familiar?
Part of the area.
What do you mean by part of your area?
My area is that. It's scary.
I couldn't believe it. It's almost like it's his killing field. We also showed Rodney Alcala the picture of Christine seated on the back of his motorcycle, and it gives me chills even today to remember his reaction.
Talk to me about the picture.
What picture?
The picture that you're pointing at. What's on your mind? Talk to me. Rod, talk to me. Tell me about that girl.
He took his finger and he started tracing her body on the photograph. And then he started tapping on the photograph and kept doing that for a couple more minutes.
That's a guy who wants to relive it again. It empowers him, right? He would relive that.
You could see his eyes moving in his eyelids, almost like he had relived that moment. That entire moment for however long it lasted with Christine out in the desert.
Do you know her? Yes or no?
Yeah.
You remember taking this picture?
Yes.
Okay. Now the question is, Mr. Alcala, how did she end up dead? Did you kill her? Yes or no, sir?
When it comes to the big question, he's not going to give it to you. But we got him to admit that he was there. And we got him to admit that he knew Christine. And that's all we needed.
So Rodney Alcala was eventually charged with first-degree murder in Sweetwater County, Wyoming.
They informed me that he was not able to travel without great expense. And so I made the decision that I was not going to try to bring Alcala back to stand trial in Wyoming.
Best place for Rodney Alcala is exactly where we left him. Seeing that jail cell and that setup that he's in, he's where he needs to be.
It was disappointing that we weren't going to get a conviction on her murder, but the good thing about all of this is that this man has been brought to light as being a serial killer. His victims are still out there.
Over the years, Rodney Alcala was given multiple opportunities to disclose those victims, whether part of plea deals, to avoid the death penalty, but he continuously refused to give up that information.
He has memories that he has kept secret from everyone.
That power gives him gratification, and him having the information on victims and us not knowing it, that's something he wants to take to his grave.
And that is exactly what he did. Rodney Alcala, a.k.a. the dating game killer, died in prison 2 years ago, never giving up those secrets. That is our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir, and from all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.